Welcome to the work session for the Village Board of the Village of Pleasantville. Today is Monday, October 25th. First up is a presentation by Sustainable Westchester.
Paul, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Am I able to turn my camera off or share my screen?
Yep, you should be able to share your screen.
We encourage you to share your screen.
Thank you. All right. So let me.
It's working.
All right. Sounds good. All right. Thank you, everyone. My name is Paul President. I'm the Outreach Manager for Sustainable Westchester, and this presentation and this update on the performance of the Westchester Power Program is part of our compliance for the Public Service Commission to give you a report on the performance and what's a little bit around the midway point. And thank you, Administrator Morrissey, for providing us with this opportunity to be on the agenda. So I'm going to go through this very quickly. If you have any questions on the slides that I do not have highlighted or hidden, please feel free to contact me. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. But who we are, Sustainable Westchester, we're a nonprofit consortium of 44 local governments to support county programming and environmental protection and climate resiliency, and also accessibility to renewable energy. We know that—
If I could interrupt briefly, that's 44 out of 45, right?
44, yep, 44 out of 45. The only municipality is not part of us is the village of Buchanan. Yep. So we offer numerous programs for community energy, communities in terms of Westchester Power, which I'm going to be talking about. Community solar, I'll be talking about as well. Electrification solutions such as energy smart homes, so you know what you can do in your home. Clean transportation, you can access the EV transition, and programs on grid efficiency such as grid rewards, which gives you real-time transparency of your energy usage, and the virtual power plant, which allows you to access battery storage technology to be able to have the weather resiliency for your energy supply. Zero waste programs to help you with management of things going into your solid waste stream, and also recycling literacy programs. So you know what's recyclable, what's not, going to have the convenience of your recycling schedule, your DPW, Department of Public Works, on the convenience of a mobile app device. The Westchester Power Program helps municipalities such as the Village of Pleasantville create a Community Choice Aggregation Program, which is a renewable energy optional supply for residents to really access at a more equitable price, because we're leveraging the residents within the municipality. So you have better pricing, but it's thousands of people as opposed to one residential property owner trying to get renewable energy supply. And we are able to provide this for residents as an option for you to have, as opposed to Con Edison, and access climate goals, such as the Climate Leadership Community Protection Act, and as well as some goals that you may have through your sort of clean energy campaign or the Climate Smarts community programming. As some of you may know, through CLCPA, we had to be at 70% renewable by 2030, and by 2040, we had to be at 100% carbon-free emission for our energy supply and consumption. And we're able to provide fixed rates on competitor price for Con Edison, and we work with municipal leaders such as yourself to set the pricing target. The pricing contract is going to be all the way towards June of 2022, but before then, around March and April, we'll be working with you to make sure we get the best pricing for your constituency in the Village of Pleasantville to have this renewable supply as an option. It's in 28 out of the 28 municipalities. 29 is going to be coming through, but the city of Yonkers, which will give us the third largest city in the state of New York, and also the largest municipality in the state of New York with a Community Choice Aggregation Program. Power. So far, we have offset 775,000 CO2 metric tons of CO2, which is the equivalency of taking 168,000 cars off the road in Westchester County for 1 year, or the planting of seedlings throughout the county in the span of 10 years. We're very proud of the performance of Pleasantville as a village in Westchester County, because you have already offset 666 metric tons of CO2, which is the equivalency of taking 1,880 cars off the road in the Village of Pleasantville for 1 year, or the planting of 142,990 tree seedlings over the span of 10 years. For those of you who may or may not know, 1 metric ton is the equivalent of 2,204.6 pounds. So it's a really large number of carbon that has been sequestered out of your village community. Taken out, not sequestered, my apologies. We have two options for the Westchester Power Program. We have a renewable energy supply option that is at 7.41 cents per kilowatt, which is fixed price pricing, and small businesses can access that for 7.10 cents per kilowatt. And we have a standard supply for those of you who, some of you who may not want to, who want to be in the Community Choice Aggregation Program, but do not want the 100% renewable New York State hydropower, could have an option of getting fixed rates for residential properties at 6.75 cents per kilowatt and small commercial at 6.5. This is a chart of our comparison pricing for how we compete with Con Edison. During 2019, going into 2020, we did see a dip. Gas and oil prices went down. There's videos all over people going to gas stations and putting gasoline in buckets and things like that. That's how low gas was. But we've been seeing a strong recovery through the 2021 economy, and our pricing being that returning to being competitive with Con Edison's rate. Similar fluctuation with small commercial business as well. But the silver lining is our 7.41 cents per kilowatt is better than what you would see if you went to the New York State Power to Choose website right now, which shows that this energy option is feasible. It is competitive by us coming together to make this energy supply more accessible for others. And this is a chart for comparison for pricing. So you may have it. Our current contractual period has been performing pretty well in comparison to the price, or our energy supply option pricing program. Our customers participants are paying $2.68 more per month than a Con Edison participant, but this is them completely offsetting the carbon emissions for electricity supply. And this is for the average account of which is 527 kilowatts per month. Similar chart for small commercial businesses as well too. And just so I'll be talking about community solar as well too, which is a community solar program for residents to be able to access nearby solar farms and subscribe to them to have solar credits reflected on their bills for up to 10% savings on their electricity supply. And we are now going to be entering into consolidated billing, which is going to allow it to be integrated with your community choice aggregation participants through the Westchester Power program. So they'll be able to gain those savings as well too. It's going to have you support an economic agenda, because first it can be accessible to low and moderate income participants within the program. And it's going to make the community choice aggregation Westchester Power program that much more attractive, because not only are they offsetting their carbon emissions through New York State hydropower, but they're also being able to access 10% savings, kind of mitigate the $2 extra that people are paying per month in comparison to Con Edison. And we're going to make a couple of tweaks to the enabling law. I'll be circling back with Dan Welsh, the director of Westchester Power Program, Administrator Morrissey, just to make sure this is accessible for your constituents. And Grid Rewards, we're a huge advocate of downloading this on your cell phone. It's on Apple, and also on the Google Play Store. You could really access real-time tracking of your electricity supply, so you know what you're expected to be paying and how much you're using, so you can be able to make the smart change on your daily uses through your household. And we also have demand response events that will be occurring during the summer 2022 cycle, which will allow you to be able to know when the grid is at peak usage and roll on your AC use, electricity use, and be able to get economic incentives by getting paid from the utility for making these smart decisions during peak load usage times. And last slide is on key dates and milestones. The end of our contractual period is June 30, 2022, which will mean that we'll be working on the notification and the RFP process with you as municipal leaders during March and April. And if you have any information on county local press, please share with us. Please follow us on Instagram. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you're needing any digital collateral on any of our programs, Sustainable Westchester, as well as educational videos in energy literacy, teaching people how to read their bills and be able to work side by side with leaders such as yourselves for energy programming for the city and virtual community presentations. We're willing to do that with any neighborhood associations, community organizations, businesses. We want to make sure we're helping you get the word out on these renewable energy programs to meet these climate goals in the middle of our climate emergency. And that's about it. Thank you so much, everyone, for giving me the time to make this presentation. And we're proud of the work that's being done in Pleasantville. We are very, very proud. Count on your community to help set the standard for the county's overall inertia to combat climate change.
So you'll be up for an RFP in the next few months?
So I didn't quite hear that.
You'll be out with a new RFP for a new contract in the spring?
Yes. Around the month of April, we'll be working on that.
So is that, now you got 44 municipalities involved. Is that more than was the case when you last went to contract?
Well, we have 28 municipalities out right now, and we're gonna have 29 with Yonkers. So it's gonna make us that much more more leverage. we're going to have more leverage among the energy supply companies that want to get the contract, because it's going to allow them to be alleviated of the bus fuel program and have to knock on doors, make calls. They might come off as life insurance salespersons.
So adding Yonkers was a big chunk of demand, right?
Yes, Yonkers is going to give us a lot of accounts. I think we're making rough estimates of about like 50,000 more accounts.
Oh, do you know if they're going to go with the green option or the brown option?
They're going to be going with the renewable energy, the green option, which should be great because now we're going to be able to offset more metric tons of carbon dioxide. So those numbers are going to go up.
So you're probably wise enough not to answer this, but do you have a sense for whether the contract will come in at a similar number to the current one?
I don't know, but that is a Dan Welsh question, but I can carbon copy you in an email and we can get that information.
This one, I'll go after you.
I just wanted to follow up on community solar and grid rewards.
Yes.
I'm liaison to the Climate Smart Community Group.
Oh, wow. Thank you for your leadership.
Thanks. Well, likewise. We would like to make a push on both of those, but I feel like I need a kind of one-on-one to get more information on them.
I'll be happy. Yeah, I'll be happy to. If I could just I could share with you my email. It's paul@sustainablewestchester.
Okay.
And once you send me a message, I'll connect you immediately to Clara Kokoska, who's our manager of solar programs, and she can explain to you about solar and ways you can get the word out to your constituency. And Michelle Delafontaine, who could tell you more about grid rewards and how we can ensure that that application gets downloaded among the Con Edison accounts. And that grid rewards is something that they don't even have to be in the Westchester Power program to use, to have access to. It's anyone with a Con Edison account, and it's great real-time tracking of their energy consumption.
That's great. So it was paul@sustainablewestchester.org. Is that right?
That's it.
Great. Thank you.
Great.
Hi, Paul. My name's Michael. I'm the new guy here on the village board. Thanks for your work. And my question is about energy storage. I follow this world a little bit, and
Yes.
It seems like there are huge developments in the last couple of years in long duration storage, and there's
Yes.
some kind of pilot projects going on. I think one in Minnesota, other places. I'm just wondering where we're at in Westchester for those kind of things.
So the virtual power plant was just launched this year as a virtual power plant was launched as a pilot this year to accommodate 200 households so that we could show this technology and show its feasibility. A big problem with renewable energy supply generation was our ability to maintain it. Obviously, it's not sunny all the time during the winter seasons. So your ability to put solar panels and be able to access the building retrofits that are done through Energy Smart Homes, so you can have overall efficiency for heating and cooling of your homes. And then you have the battery storage technology for your renewable energy supply that gives you something that you could tap into during moments where the grid goes out or local storms or things of that nature. So it is developing right now. I do commend people to look into it. We're happy to have some in the village of Pleasantville, but now we are seeing some great developments in battery storage technology for renewable energy generation. It's just, I think now the debate is safely disposing those batteries that we're using and making sure that we're able to have transparency of the recycling process of batteries to be scrapped from the raw minerals, so that these are going into your solid waste streams and being landing up in a landfill or incinerator or something like that. So it's safe.
I guess I'm curious too about the ones that are not lithium ion technologies and that are not for a private home or a business, but for a grid, kind of larger scale projects. I know it's going down the line. I just wanted to bring it up since you guys are clearly pioneering a pretty large scale vision here.
Yeah, it's 200 households for the pilot program. That's our maximum cap, but it is an opportunity to really show that we can do it here. And I think it's going to be part of more higher level conversations in the near future, as we're seeing the extremes of our weather patterns through like what we saw as what was remnants of Hurricane Ida, where the storm really that really took impact on the southern shoreline.
Thank you.
So Paul, if folks want to learn more, where do they go on the web?
Yep, they could go to sustainablewestchester.org/WP, and that will bring you to the Westchester Power Program, where you can access all information on our rates, our comparison of tracking from Con Edison during monthly billing cycles, and as well as a resource and sustainablewestchester.org, and you could access all of our programs and the contacts for you to gain more information to get word
Great.
to your
All right,
constituents.
so what will you need from us for the new RFP and contracting process?
Oh, we could set a presentation or during one of your workshop sessions. It doesn't have to be a formal meeting of the legislature. But we could walk you through the minor revisions, explain them, so you could work with, I guess, your legal team to ensure that it's going to be seamlessly implemented for this transition that the Public Service Commission is enabling.
Great. And is community choice aggregation starting to take off elsewhere in the state?
It's starting to take off. Yonkers is our big city, and we created the Westchester Power Program for the state of New York. So we were the first ones to do it in New York. Now we have some of them popping up all around the state, and we are really pioneers, and it is starting to pick up momentum because we need to be very dynamic and work together as a community to alleviate some of the economic costs to combat climate change.
Yeah. All right, great. Any other questions?
No, thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your leadership as well, too.
I missed the half-hour conversation about opt-in versus opt-out.
Memorial Plaza Parking. I'm explaining.
Yep, so we have on tonight's Board of Trustee meeting agenda, a resolution to schedule the public hearing for November 8th on this. We did get some feedback about the Monday through Friday permit holders. We had originally talked about permit holders parking only from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m. It was brought to our attention.
Not parking only that time, but restricting it to permit holders.
Correct.
Permit holders could park all day.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And it was brought to our attention that right now, obviously, Metro North is not having peak and off peak, but peak runs until, if they were or when they do institute it again, peak trains run until 10 a.m. And so,
which I think is the arrival at Grand Central.
That's right.
Yes.
So if we want to align our restriction to the Metro North's definition of peak, we would then restrict it to permit holders only from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday, instead of 6 a.m. to 11 a.m.
The result being that a permit holder could wait and get the first off-peak train in the world where peak and off-peak is restored.
Right. So in other words, starting at 10 a.m. Monday through Friday, the lot would open to non-permit holders until 6.
So I guess the question, right, because the real effect of that is that a lot of retail homes opens at 10. So I assume part of what would be maneuvering there would be essentially allowing retail employees to come in and park in that lot on an hourly basis. So we just got to decide whether that's what we want.
Right.
Well, I mean, that probably would be a good thing.
Yeah.
Very few retail employees have permits.
That's right. That's right. And then secondarily to that, we had talked about Saturdays. We had talked about having everyone pay 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Saturdays. Upon further consideration and conversation, it may be best to allow permit holders the opportunity to park for free on Saturdays, given the variables with this. You know, when they purchased the permit, the lot was open to them only, and now we're changing that dynamic. So in consideration of that, making it available on Saturdays. Also, we see very few demand.
Saturdays until what time?
So it would be, yeah.
I mean, permit holders could park on Saturdays all day. That's the idea.
They just
Until
couldn't,
midnight.
couldn't park overnight on Friday night, right?
That's right.
Okay, all right. Yeah, it's the overnight thing that I was concerned
That's right.
about, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the problems we had and that the farm market has had is folks who park there all weekend.
That's right.
Um,
So the lot would mirror what our other lot, the restrictions in our other lots, meaning the Bedford Road lot, the Manville lot is pay and display or paid parking from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's essentially what we would have out here.
And is the idea that we're going to buy this similar gizmos to what we have? Is it pay and display, or is it pay and type in your phone number, your license number?
We are leaning towards the feedback that we're getting from our parking enforcement officers is that it's more efficient and easier to enforce lots when it's license plate number.
Which is the way they do it in Mount Kisco with the same devices we have.
That's right. And the other devices can be reprogrammed for license plate. So in other words, you don't need to go to the machine, get the ticket.
It's much better.
10 times better.
Yeah, right.
12 times better.
14 times.
And then, of course, we would also have the Pango mobile app available
Right.
for these spaces as well.
That makes sense.
So as compared to what we talked about before, the idea is that it would become available for transient parking at 10 instead of 11.
Mhm.
And we had at one point had the idea that permit holders would be entitled to free parking only weekdays, and now we're proposing to include Saturdays as well. Which I'm guessing, I mean, first off, it's out of respect for them, but I'm also guessing that it's a pretty small market.
It seems fair. I think that's the best way. Because they're paying for that, and then, they got that usage, a little extra, and they're already giving it out kind of without, authorization during the week, so why not?
And especially coming off this year when so many people paid for a permit and used it rather than for.
Right.
That's right.
Who knows what that will look like in the year to come, but
That's right.
this brings each other.
So what I'll do tomorrow is I'll circulate the updated introductory local law to the board. It needs to be on your desks for 10 days prior to the public hearing, so we can move forward with scheduling the public hearing. All right.
Right, so we have that public hearing schedule on tonight, and just to be clear, we could loosen up the regulations, but we can't tighten them in the
That's right.
context of the public.
So if we get
So we have
feedback
to
from
put
the
that-
public and you're so urged to change the restrictions, somewhat we can still do that the night of the public hearing and still pass it.
But only to
Lessen
relieve
the
the restriction, not to censor.
So, this all sounds great to me. I just want to be clear, I understand. What happens to a permit car that is left on Friday night? In this new
Don't tell
scenario.
it to your driveway.
In this new scenario.
So
We
it's
have a little gizmo that vaporizes it.
Yeah, how it,
So
it's pretty hypothetical. I'm not
we're,
gonna do it.
we're not changing, we're not touching the overnight
Uh-huh.
issue
Yeah.
for lots. What happens in the Memorial Plaza lot is the farmer's market has to operate on Saturday mornings.
Sure.
And so what the board does is authorize the towing of vehicles that are left in those spaces.
Got it.
And so we communicate to all permit holders directly through email. Obviously, we sign it as well, but.
Yeah.
Would that be true for cars left on the south end of the lot as well?
No, typically it's only on the north end. Now,
Where the vendors are. Now,
But are we trying
I'm
to,
talking about the south end.
yeah,
Yeah,
oh,
I'm
right.
trying to
So now,
keep
if,
them
when the
all.
market moves to the south end, we would do that. Our issue with overnight parking is not with permit holders. It's typically non-permit holders.
That's the problem. That's the problem we're trying to solve.
it is almost exclusively non-permanent.
That's right, that's right.
So, and will that, are we transitioning to a toast mirror, or are we ticketing, or are we?
what are we doing? Like, let's say a non-permit holder parks overnight now illegally in the south end of the,
Yeah,
Memorial Plaza.
so again, just to be clear, now we're getting outside of this conversation about the local law, because the local law isn't talking about overnight parking. We're not touching that part of the code. But what we do in that scenario is we authorize the towing of those vehicles by resolution. And if vehicles are found overnight or in the morning in those areas, then they are towed.
Yeah, I
so
thought
it
we
will
were-
be a separate resolution?
But at the
Yeah.
moment, we're not anticipating increasing the towing beyond where it is right now.
I thought we were.
But I feel like we're
making
going in
illegal-
circles here, like,
Okay.
Yeah, I agree
or
with you.
either, or maybe I'm misunderstanding. Because
Yeah.
it seemed to me that part of the intention of this new law that we were drafting was to avoid having people leave their cars overnight in the parking lot so that we would, so that we don't have spaces that are taken up, notably for the farmer's market.
On the south.
on Saturday morning, right?
That's
I
right.
mean, that is true,
So,
but
so
we
how
will,
is that gonna be remedied?
I think we will mostly have achieved that by charging them on Saturday.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Okay,
So
all
we're
right,
not,
so that's the stick, as it were.
that's right.
Okay.
But how much would you be charged if you parked from Friday night until Saturday at 2 p.m. or something like that?
Friday night,
I mean, it's just such a small number of people who would
Right, I mean, I
do
think,
that and have the Pingo app and.
right.
No, I'm just saying, like, I want to know that it's a deterrent, because a lot of people are coming from other villages and towns to come and park in our parking lot.
that's right.
Overnight. That's what we're trying to avoid.
I'm not actually sure, some of it is overnight parking for folks who live in apartments and don't have convenient parking, who live in the village.
Especially during the winter months when we tell them to get their cars on the
And
street.
some of it is folks who come in very early and work nearby
Mhm.
and find it more convenient to park there because they can,
Sure.
even though they're encouraged to park somewhere else, which they could also do, they take the more convenient option, somewhat understandable. So I do think that once you have to start paying on Saturday, that in itself is a deterrent. I mean, I can tell you over the years, I've talked gently to a couple of these people, and the fact that it's free is why they're there.
Yeah, right.
That is really why they're there.
Right.
So,
Okay, well, maybe that's something to keep track of in terms.
Yeah,
definitely.
look,
Yeah,
I mean, all this is kind of a work in progress. We'll have to see how it
Sure.
goes. And
Yeah.
honestly, would we be talking about this pre-pandemic? We probably wouldn't, right? So,
Well, yes and no. I mean, I think even pre-pandemic, we had that parking analysis done, and it showed that what we were really lacking was not commuter parking, but short-term parking. So we needed to find some way to address this, and yeah, the pandemic makes it easier.
Right. Right.
I think it sounds good.
Okay.
all right.
Is this a good time to get 3 minutes on Westchester Community College as a preview?
Sure.
So I just wanted to let everybody know something that I'm working on. Westchester Community College, aside from doing the sort of first 2 years of college, associate's degree, et cetera, they do training that is specifically targeted towards jobs that exist in Westchester. There was a study done a couple of years ago about mid-skill jobs, which primarily in our county are in energy, they are in advanced manufacturing, and they're in healthcare. Those are the three largest issues. And they're the kind of jobs that you cannot walk in off the street to apply for, but most of them take a couple of months of training to like 14 months of training. And the programs are not relative to what we think of when we think of college. The programs are not that expensive. And since this, I checked, and this appears to qualify in the 4th category of the American Rescue Plan Act fund usage. I'm going to have them come in November, hopefully, to basically make a pitch to us to put aside some money for scholarships for village residents who want to either become employed or upskill into a better paying job. And some specific examples are for advanced manufacturing, there's a 63-hour course that gives them the industry credential that they need to get hired for a bunch of these jobs. It's about $1,200 for tuition, books, and fees. So not a huge amount for us and the potential life-changing event for them. For healthcare, most of their programs are about 3 months in duration, and $1,750 covers tuition, books, and fees for Westchester Community College. Then in IT and computer skills, it depends on what they're doing. There's everything from machine learning to Python coding, and that can be from between $400 and $2,500, and between a few weeks up to about 3 months. So those are sort of the kind of things. The idea is that there's probably about 10 kids coming out of Pleasantville High School every year who do not go to college, who are looking for jobs, many of whom end up in the $10 to $12 an hour range. These are considerably more than that, as well as people who became structurally unemployed during the pandemic, who lost a job in an industry that's contracting and they won't ever get it back, and this can help them make the transition. So if we do this, then also work with the village to figure out how to let people know about it. 'Cause I think the marketing is the other key issue there.
And would there be some need-based criteria for qualifying, or is it first come, first serve? What would you envision?
I would say, since we're likely talking about a relatively small amount of money, I would do it first come, first serve, because by definition, if you don't have a need, you're not going into from a $12 an hour job or from being unemployed into a $25 an hour job. So the nature of the work sort of indicates the need to begin with. If you know what I'm saying? I mean, yeah, there's probably a few kids that might have wealthy parents or whatever who could be in this category, but historically it would be small.
Okay, so let's have WCC come in as you suggested in November. Do they have scholarship funds?
They have funds that have helped establish these programs. The reason that you can get 3 months of training for $1,750, you obviously could not do that at virtually any college in the country for its regular program. It's because of the support. So for instance, the manufacturing program, it's the heavy metal band Metallica that established the program. Believe it or not, that's true.
Is there a program to make you a rock star?
There is no program in the world that can make me a rock star.
It's not lucrative anymore.
So
Edward's halfway there.
Well,
So is Albert.
That's all. We're on a village board band soon.
I know, all right. We're doing our big debut, 2022.
This is why we've kept them at opposite ends.
that's it.
Okay, great. All right, Chief.
Sounds good.
Discussion regarding updating department policy and procedures. We have this big fat notebook.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
We do indeed. Not going anywhere anytime soon. But
Let me migrate over to you. I have done so. Okay.
oh, thanks. I mean, I don't need it for.
Yeah, that.
but
Yeah.
So good evening, everybody. Thank you for taking some time to hear me out on this. So as part of our police reform initiative, we did discuss a review of our policies and procedure manual as we go forward. As the mayor said, it is an extremely thick book of the policies and the way that we expect our officers to handle calls and perform their duties. We recognize that at this point now, it is probably in our best interest. It's been about 6 years since those policies were reviewed. I shouldn't say reviewed, I apologize. They're regularly reviewed, but there was a whole scale updating of those policies. And
just to remind folks, the use of force piece was updated.
Yes, use of force was updated. Our prisoner transport policy was updated. That as is necessary. Obviously, our operations remain modern and remain updated. However, we believe that a widespread, overall, overreaching review of the policies and procedures, updating is appropriate at this time. There are some other benefits that we're looking to enjoy from that as well, not just to update the policies, but to make the policies easier to maintain and to upkeep, and then to make the policies a living document. So the policies and procedures currently are basically paper copies that we keep at the desk. Each officer is issued their own copy of this. As the policies are updated, they're handed new paper. They're to remove the old policy from the old book and put in the new one. But this doesn't exactly breed a culture of reference using the book. We want this book to be a living document, not only in the fact that it is regularly maintained and updated to the highest possible standards, but also in the fact that officers are comfortable accessing the book, accessing the policies, reviewing them, making sure that their actions follow policies. Obviously, I don't want to give the impression that we're currently not following our policies. The officers know what they have to do on calls, and obviously, any sort of high priority, some sort of incident that requires a more thorough approach is probably going to include multiple people at multiple different ranks. So I'm really not, I hope I'm not coming across with the impression that that currently the service that we're providing to the public is less than it could be. But we believe that if we're going to have a policy and procedure manual in place, that we should do what we can to make sure that the officers are as comfortable with it, or as reliant as reliant as they should be upon it. And so for that reason, we're examining sort of what our different options are to update the policies and to make them more of a living document. So at this point, there are a number of companies that offer this service. So let me back up just for a second. So I do envision this, and we talked about this during police reform. This is a two-step process. The first process is to update the policies, go through them one by one, make sure that they are best practices, smart practices, legally sufficient, and at the same time, they reflect our operations here. They use our verbiage for things. We can't just, wholesale take a policy from someplace else and drop it in our laps, and all of a sudden it doesn't necessarily apply. So there is a great deal of editing and personalizing, localizing of any policy before it gets put into place. So we have talked to a few vendors who specialize in this type of product, in this type of service. And so we could potentially look to see our policies that are reviewed by subject matter experts, localized and personalized to our needs, put on a database, an updating app that the officers can download on their phone so they have it at a moment's notice at any time. Potentially daily training bulletins or modules that can come in to make sure that the most critical standards are not just in the book, but in front of mind for the officers when they're on these calls. And were we to accomplish all of that, we do believe that we would potentially prepare, if the board is so inclined, to seek New York State accreditation. So New York State accreditation is 110 standards that they have for all manner of police work. First step is to update your policies and procedures that all 110 standards are reflected in those policies. And then eventually there is a process by which they assess to make sure that you're following those policies, that your staff is familiar with the policies. It's a process. It's a lengthy process. It's a very labor-intensive process. But I think once we have our policies where they can be, there's no reason to think that we shouldn't take that final step and potentially become a New York State accredited agency.
Thank you, Chief. So the Chief, Eric, and I have discussed this some length a few times around, and obviously everything you've said is very appealing. What is the, if it were free, I think everybody would be all over it. But it's a pretty expensive venture, and so that's partly the question that confronts us, right?
You mean the accreditation?
Also the policy piece.
Also the policy piece.
Right. Yeah, the accreditation part is actually, it's a New York State process, so there are some expenses that go along with it, such as when the assessor comes in, we have to pay for their hotel and things like that. But the accreditation part, to my knowledge, does not necessarily come with a cost. That's just, but leading up to that point, getting our agency to a point where we could have somebody come in and make the deepest dive possible into our policies and procedures and make sure that they are reflected in our daily operations, that's a costly.
So
That's
can
where
you
the
break that down a little bit? Like, what kinds of work does that entail for a vendor to take that on?
The policy and procedure part?
Yeah.
Sure. So, so first and foremost, we'll take, just in one individual policy. We would need to in some way or another find a template or a boilerplate sort of policy that we would model our new policy off of. We would then need to take the time to make sure that all the information that's in the policy adjust it to what we need, make sure that it reflects how we operate, how we do things. And it goes through a number of different reviews. The lieutenants and myself would be a part of that, the review process. And then potentially the policy is issued, the policy is signed off on by the officers as they receive it. And then depending on the platform or the vendor that we're using, potentially downloaded to an app or some other digital medium for the officers to be able to access.
And who's sort of making the judgment calls? Like, would there be, because I imagine you have like an overall sense of the existing policy, right? And you probably would have to like comb through it again to look at the details, but you probably have a sense of like, we could tweak this a little bit here, we could tweak that. So who would be making those kinds of decisions?
I mean, so under normal circumstances on it, so many of our policies are rather routine, right? They talk about what do we do when we tow a car from before a farmer's market, or how we handle administrative duties. And don't get me wrong, the administrative duties, many of the critical standards that accreditation recognizes, critical standards being the ones that obviously have to meet all the standards, but these are the ones that they're much more specific on, represent liability issues for departments. And administration is usually is a significant portion of where liability exists, how you handle evidence, how you handle cash, things like that. So for the routine policies, we would be making those decisions internally inside the department if the board was so inclined to, potentially review at their convenience and to whatever at whatever level of interest they had. That's a possibility as well. Usually, though, however, the actual day-to-day operational grinding through this, this is a couple hours every week of staying on top of this, is usually handled internally.
Okay, I was just trying to get a sense of the mechanics of it.
Sure.
So just to be clear, Chief, you're also imagining that if we were to go down this road, we would need not only an outside vendor who has a period of time of much greater involvement and then an annual expense forevermore to maintain this online system, but also more staff, right?
Well, yes. So this is work that is this is so labor intensive at this portion of the process that it becomes, if not a full-time job, it becomes in order to expect that this process be finished in a reasonable amount of time, it would require the attention of someone on a fully, if not nearly fully full-time basis.
For how long do you think? 2 years?
The process, I don't believe there's any chance it goes beyond 2 years. The process I've heard usually lasts 12 to 18 months for someone to handle that if they're giving it their full attention. And obviously there's, the only timeline that is set is the timeline we set for ourselves. So
in layman's terms, what's the benefit to the community process?
So I think there is the sense that that your department is meeting the highest standards for law enforcement. There are some financial benefits as far as insurance, to my understanding, for that. There is an increased, I don't want to say transparency, because it's not as if we're looking to make this to go through this process potentially increases the ability for people to, I think it will increase the ability for people to participate in their police department and be more aware of the operations as we go forward and what we do. I think this process, however we go about doing it, definitely improves the product that we're going to, I shouldn't say improve the product because I don't want to make it sound like the product, I'm not happy with the product as it is. My point is, this is the modern way. This is the responsive way of of us interacting with the public, of us setting and maintaining standards for our officers. And so I think the benefit to the public, the public definitely benefits from that.
So in the mandated safe process that we went through last year, a whole bunch of changes came out of that. Was that less in scope or greater in scope than the changes that would come out of this review?
So that process was a 35,000-foot view of the police department, how it operates, how it interacts with the public. And from that came a number of actionable items that were pulled from it so that we could realize the benefits that we recognized as being available to us in some form or another. This would potentially be, this is one of those key elements that was in there to make sure that people were confident that our rules and regulations, our officers are as up to date and as responsive as they can be. And again, I keep hesitating when we talk about things because I really don't want to give the impression that, listen, we need this because we're falling apart downstairs. The officers are doing a tremendous job. We handle our business the way we're supposed to. This to me, I think is in whatever form or fashion we go forward with this, really provides a benefit to the community on a specific day-to-day basis.
So one of the things that came out of the process, I think it affects everybody in the state, right? It's demographic data reporting for stops and all that. Has that is that worked out at the state level for how that's going to get reported? Do you have to work out for for Pleasantville itself, or is that going to be part of this process?
So that will not be part of the process, but that's a great example. So what this process will do let's say, maybe it's not something as well known as demographic reporting on our interactions, but it's something else where the law changes and the expectations of the community changes. This will be a third-party subject matter expert who sends us a note that says, you need to change your policy to include this now, and this is how you're going to change your policy. Take a look at it, make sure this makes sense for you and how it works for you. But here are the new standards that you're going to have to comply with. And there will definitely be, as we go into this sort of maintenance portion of it, there would definitely be some work that would be done on our level to update the procedure. But the policy would be provided, and so would potentially, keep us in compliance. And again, keep the officers knowing that we're doing things, I don't want to say we're doing things the right way, but that we're doing everything that we can to remain as transparent and as modern as we can.
So I have a question. So as you know, we're having the first meeting of the Community Outreach and Communication Committee. So do you think that this format would be something that would be available to the public, and would it, do you think it would aid in transparency in any way in terms of sort of communicating police procedures so that people could inform themselves if they wanted to?
Yeah, I feel it's definitely a tool that potentially, were this to be in existence for the work of that committee, I think it would make it much easier for them if they had a question about a procedure or an operation or something that we do. It would make it much easier for them to be informed of.
And the broader public as well. potentially.
By extension, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, I wouldn't definitely not limit it to.
I don't know if you ever look through what we have now, but it's
No, I
several hundred pages and.
Yeah,
and,
no, I know.
You have to be a pretty serious.
You have to be very dedicated to want to do that.
Now, that's different
Well-
from somebody who has a specific issue and wants to dig into it, that's a.
Right, well, I was just
absolutely
wondering
worthy
if
thing,
the
yeah.
format would make it a little bit easier, I guess.
So Chief, you and I have had various pieces of this conversation already, but how much different is our policy, or should our policy be, than say Town of Mount Pleasant or Briarcliff or Newcastle?
Some policies, I think they probably mirror each other very closely. Other policies, not so much.
So, I mean, the reason I asked that is, in the category of shared services and we're trying to avoid sort of built-in costs. If we all follow this process, we're each spending a few $100,000 in the coming years to do this.
Well, I mean, I might take a little bit of issue with the characterization of the cost, but I would say this, yes, unfortunately, because this is each set of policies and procedures is potentially unique in and of the department that maintains them. Yes, this is not something that we could potentially all pool in and do together. I wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable making, so here's what I would envision as far as that is concerned. Potentially, if somehow we could find a company that said, okay, we'll take 3 or 4 departments and we'll give you the bare bones of it, and you can all split the cost, which I don't know that would necessarily happen. But if that were to happen, we lose out on the benefit of the interaction back and forth, the follow-up, the continuum. There are many ways to accomplish what we're doing. The question becomes, how long does it take? How much work are we going to keep for ourselves? We could potentially update these policies and procedures without any help from anybody. And we could potentially save money. I don't know how long that would take. I don't, the 12 to 18 month timeline goes out the window, simply because we are paying for their assistance and their moving forward. As far as sharing this opportunity or this with other departments, I don't know where they are in their policies and procedures. Mount Pleasant is an accredited agency. I'm just using them because they're our neighbor. They are an accredited agency so far. So,
and do they have policies and procedures in a similar online system?
And that I don't know. I polled the villages. Most of the villages, I don't want to say, I would say it's probably about 60% of the villages use a service like ours, used it originally to either to assist in their accreditation procedure or just to update the policies. And although some have said that their experience was not what they had hoped it to be, because either the policies or the advice given was too general or too specific. The majority of the villages that I've talked to who have utilized these services are happy with them and think that it brings a real benefit to their department. Now, the good news is if we get involved with this process and realize we don't need it, it's too cumbersome, it's not what we thought it was going to be, we can back out. These aren't lifetime commitments.
So you're going into a 12 to 18 month process, and it will look at the way you do every single thing that you're involved with on a daily basis, right? There's clearly going to be areas where Pleasantville is different, and having that interaction with the agency that is expert in this will be really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But there must be some areas where there are established best practices, where it's very clear that it's not, if it's handling evidence or something like that, there's a standard and what you should be doing, and it's not going to. So my question is, rather than the either or approach, would it be possible to find 2 or 3 comparable villages who wanted to go through the same process, to start with them together to get a bare bones, because a lot of times that covers a lot of volume, and then you know where the areas are where you actually want the individual attention. Instead of paying for individual attention for 18 months, maybe you pay for the last 6 months. Would that be something like that be possible?
So again, I don't know that I've ever heard of anyone sharing this service before. So I don't know what the market would be for that type of process going forward.
I mean, it's a question, like if you could figure out who needs it, then you could just go to them and say, hey, let's go together to these 3 vendors and say, take us as a whole. We each want to get the bare bones outline or whatever, 80% of our paperwork done, and then we want 6 months of your individual time to customize the areas where we're going to be different from one another.
Or alternatively, sort of building on your idea, David, we're just throwing around ideas. So you talked about hiring a vendor and then also hiring somebody full-time to help with just the, the day-to-day work of going through the procedures and everything. Would it be possible to start with that person and get sort of what, I don't know, some version that David's describing that would be almost complete, but not perhaps entirely tweaked, and then theoretically hire an outside consultant to kind of fine tune it?
So are you,
I guess
So,
maybe
because
what we-
you
yeah.
had said that like here, you'd said we could just do it internally, but then it would take a really long time, right? So I imagine part of what would be challenging about that would just be the labor itself. So if you were to hire somebody to help with the labor, you wouldn't have quite that level of expertise, but you could get, say, 80% of the way there. And then if you found that it wasn't possible to sort of complete the job that way, then potentially hiring an agency at that point to step in and help you complete it.
I think there are other benefits that come with the using a vendor for this.
Mhm.
Most notably, their online, app protocol whereby they can, like I said, we want to create a culture where the officers can routinely do it. To simply go out and update the policies now and not have something tied to a maintenance of those policies. We end up 6 years from now exactly where we are today. So I would like to move us into my preference is to move us into a new way of looking at our policies and procedures.
I have a question, and I may have missed it. How does the timing of this proposal and request line up with our annual budgeting timeline?
We roll into budget, we'll start that process in February and March.
That's what I meant. I feel like, so why, I guess maybe I missed it, but why now? Is it for servicing the vendors and starting that process, or? Because
No.
it feels like the budgeting would not happen until several months from now.
Can I suggest this? I mean, first off, thank you, Chief. As I said at the outset, I think all of us would be gung ho for this if it were free. The only issue is a cost benefit analysis, and that's what we're going through. We've got to put together a budget so that all of us are looking at numbers and can sort of start to think that through. And that process will also engage the question of, is there another way at this? Is there a partial way? Is there a hybrid? Is there a whatever? So Lou Dorio has something to say. Lou, can you speak?
Can you hear me?
We can.
I'm speaking to try and put my experience with this into it. I realize I've been retired quite some time. When I was with my department, we started the process. We got accredited. My department has been re-accredited every 5 years since. They're still accredited now. The process when we started it, and one of the board members had asked, what the benefits, what the purpose. The initial purpose for state accreditation, and there are two accreditations. There's state accreditation, New York State accreditation, and then there's a federal accreditation. There's only one department in all of Westchester that I know of that has federal accreditation, and that's Scarsdale. But what they do is the standards are just such. They actually told us when we started the process, we would like for you to steal processes or procedures from other similar departments. What they're trying to do is standardize the way people do things. Now, obviously, when it comes down to the policy, Pleasantville's policy on a certain procedure, on a certain standard of the size of the town, village, the size of the department, is going to be somewhat different than what mine was for a 75-man police department in a town that covered 26 square miles. So, but the basis behind it was the same. In other words, how do you handle things in your evidence room? That's what they put out are standards of how to do things because they'd like to get pretty much everybody standardized. The policy can be individual to whatever agency it is, but the standard is what they're trying to reach. In fact, in listening to some of the reports from the police forum meetings, the one with the Westchester County, one of the recommendations was for every police department in Westchester County to be accredited. I agree wholeheartedly with the chief. I mean, we went through it. It is a Herculean effort. I had an individual assigned to that for full-time for over a year. Now, I didn't have the services that I'm listening to the chief explain that he could use to look into. I mean, I'm retired 25 years, so things have changed. However, the standards that the accreditation committee puts out, we're hoping that each department follows the same standard, regardless of what their individual policy is, as long as it meets the standard that they're putting out. There is a benefit to having it. It certainly would be a benefit litigation-wise. If you know, I've always taught my students a bad policy is better than no policy. However, you don't want your policy to be bad. I mean, this might take a look at some things and say, well, what is our we don't have a policy on this. That would open you up to major lawsuits to not have a policy on something. Something like if we went back to vehicle pursuits or something of that nature. So what the accreditation committee does is the chief's got a list of standards. He knows what the standards are going to be. He mentioned how many of them there were. The standard, the policies that he has to write have to be specific to the village of Pleasantville, but they have to meet that particular standard. And they do encourage you. He even mentioned you get a template. And they encourage you to do that. Get a template from another agency that's similar, see how they do it and how they've met the standard. I would welcome the chief to contact the current chief of my department and let him talk to him and see what they just recently went through reaccreditation. And he might be able to give him some help along that line. Like I said, they are different size departments, but it is a good thing to do to look at your policies and make sure that you do have a policy that meets the standard so that you are covered with how you're doing things. I'm sure our procedures, our policies within the village, I'm sure that our department has been diligent about making sure they're as up to date as possible, but it never hurts to take a look and see what are they looking for us to do different on a state basis. Forget about the national basis. Like I said, there's only one that's got the CALIA, but you'll see the agencies that have their state accreditation, they have their stickers right on their cars, New York State accredited. It is something good to have for liability situations. Number one, if you're looking to save money on doing the procedure, you should also be looking to save money on any potential lawsuits because your policy wasn't up to snuff, let's say, with what the state is recommending you do. But what they're trying to do is standardize throughout the state how people do certain procedures.
Great, thank you for that, Lou. Well taken. So we have you back in a moment.